Also looking more broadly through the corridor with some partnership with the county and townships, Plainfield and Ada in particular, all of whom have projects ongoing through the corridor in some phase of conceptual development or design or soon construction. We identified about 36 projects totaling about $300 million, and that committee did quite a bit of work to just develop some criteria. How are we thinking about these projects? How are we prioritizing the investment of the state's grant? And the main sort of organizing idea that came out of those conversations was to focus those dollars on the construction of what we're calling the backbone trail, identifying the gaps in the river, the trail that's running adjacent to the river, and really focusing those dollars on filling those gaps and making those connections. So what you're seeing on this map here, hopefully all of you can see it, is sort of the beginning of us putting together where those gaps and those connections are. Everything that's in green on here, dotted green lines, are existing trail connections. The stuff that is in red are the gaps in the river adjacent Greenway Trail. So those are the gaps that we are working on right now. In particular, I'm going to start from the right and come to the left here, east to west. The big long red line there to the right side is the what we're calling the Grand Rapids to Lowell connection that the county has taken the lead on, and we're currently working, DGRI is currently working to develop a sub-grant agreement with the county. As we come into Comstock Park and down into the city, Leonard to Ann, a very critical connection to connect the north side of downtown to Riverside Park. That project is getting final design, getting ready to construction. That will happen next year. That was one of the priority projects that came out. Coming down a little bit further into downtown in the red. Actually, Marion, please click one more slide, because there's a lot of energy that's right now coming together on the southeast side. And just wanted to kind of walk through those connections very quickly. Site 1 there is the Charlie's Crab and 201 site, where the amphitheater work is also underway. Team right now on board thinking about the design of that trail from Fulton Street to Wealthy Street. Site 2 is the existing Oxford Trail. Right now, just got the consultant on board to take a look at a plan for rehabbing that trail, but also extending it about another half mile or so to Hall Street. And then section 3 here is showing some planning work that will be getting underway next year to make a connection to an existing Plaster Creek Trail, which is maybe 2 or 3 miles further to the east here. So quite a bit of energy and momentum coming together here on the southeast side in particular to connect into the southeast side neighborhoods, 49507. These are neighborhoods that historically have no connection to the Grand River Corridor, primarily because of a lot of the industrial stuff in our past, the highway, the railroads, a lot of industrial land. So that is the sort of the main idea that we're organizing around with this grant, is establishing that backbone trail and a key connection to the southeast side. And that enables us, and I know this is something the county's also having conversation more broadly as well. The idea is establishing that backbone trail ultimately sets us up to enable other connections down the line that might, other projects that will be outside of the timeline that we have with the current spend here. So when all this comes together in 5 years or so, remember GR Forward Goal 1, establishing downtown Grand Rapids, and frankly Kent County as the hub in a regional recreational system. This is going to get us a long way there, really establishing downtown as that hub, not only the connections to the north and the White Pine Trail and out to the east to Lowell, but also connecting to the work in Ottawa County and a connection to Lake Michigan. So a very, very significant push on off-street, non-motorized trail connections over the next 3 to 5 years. We've been working closely with the county's team, the city's team, to get this together. We've completed a grant agreement with the city Working on that right now with the county. The DDA also is a partner in this work, particularly funding some of the early startup efforts, getting a couple of projects started, supporting some of the administrative stuff, and things like that. So we need to get an agreement in place between DGRI and the DDA as well, so that DGRI can work with the DDA to cover some of those costs. I have stood up there a couple of times with you in the last year and said, hey, these costs could be reimbursed when those dollars start to flow. So that's what we're asking you to take action on today, is to authorize the DDA staff to develop and enter into an agreement with DGRI to allow us to allow the DDA to receive those funds. Next step, DGRI meets next week, and we'll be taking the city agreement and this DDA agreement to the DGRI and button all that up and keep moving with the state on receiving those funds and keeping the work moving. So. Jessica, anything to add on this action?
No, I think that's a good summary, and there is a resolution in your packet authorizing what you just described. So we need a vote on that.
So moved.
Support. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Andy, thank you for this and for all your work on this, and also kudos to the county for their leadership. I'm curious, just a couple things, both for these projects as well as some of the work that the county is teeing up to do. What are we confident that we'll be able to meet the timelines, knowing that these dollars have a really firm, I mean, they have to be allocated by the end of next year and then fully spent by 2026. So
Yeah.
I just want to I want to be assured that we have a plan in place to meet those timelines.
Yes.
Okay.
All these projects are currently under contract with consultants that are working on design and thinking about that path forward. They all have project management in place. Everybody is keenly aware of particularly the 2024 date. Next year is going to be an active year, but we're confident that we're going to hit that timeline.
Okay, thanks. And then my other, it's a comment, not a question. I had the opportunity to go with Andy and bike some of these trails and really see firsthand the opportunity. If you haven't had a chance to do that, I encourage you to do it. I wonder if we should even maybe coordinate something, maybe not as long as the one that we did, but encourage something if anyone from this body or DGRI wanted to get out and actually see some of these sections, whether it's the downtown sections or, quite frankly, Al, even some of the work that the county's doing. Even if we did some kind of bus tour or something, it may be worthwhile.
Are you saying the rest of us couldn't handle the bike track?
I could barely handle it. I was exhausted. I'm not as in good of shape as Andy, but anyway, I do think with the amount of money and time and energy going into this, seeing it is so, it just gives you a greater, I already was excited about it, but it gave me a greater appreciation for the tremendous opportunity, as well as the assets that are there, the ones we need to improve, the level of maintenance, where the disconnection points are. It really gives you a much better overall view and understanding and appreciation for the opportunity that this provides our community. So I just want to put it out there, not anytime soon, but I would say maybe even in the spring, if we could get, 20 people on a bus and we can go around and really see firsthand.
I was going to say in the spring, if the grass wouldn't be as tall as we hack through to find some of that goat path. We're happy to do that, and if folks are interested, get that together and make it happen.
Yeah.
So we do know how to formulate a motion to receive money. We do? Okay. Did it.
Yeah. Oh, Greg has a question.
Yes, great.
And super excited to see this moving forward. It's been years in the progress. Question on this grant, or the $2 million, would it be spent entirely within the DDA's boundaries?
Yes, it's primarily going to be our admin time on a lot of these projects. We will be in a separate agreement with the county, so to speak, and they'll be handling the stuff along the Grand Rapids to Lowell trail. But yeah, primarily administrative cost with managing the grant. We were here with a guidehouse contract a while ago for compliance, legal fees, There is a little bit of project money probably in here. We've advanced some money on design for some trails on the southeast side of downtown, but the short answer to your question is yes.
And just concerned that, given the statutory authorization of this body, that we receive public monies and use them only within the confines of our boundaries.
If we could have a point of clarification on that, because my understanding was it was either within these boundaries or to the benefit of these boundaries. I recall a DDA that built a water tower, or shared the portion of a water tower because it's also served the downtown, but the water tower was located outside of the DDA.
Right, so there is some case law that expounds upon that, says that you can spend money for the benefit of the district, although we try not to push that envelope. And given the expenses incurred within your district, there's no reason to go outside the district in this case, so.
Sure.
Yep.
And
But
a
you're
lot of
right.
the project work had been for planning previously as well for the overall benefit.
Another example would be marketing, where sometimes that's going to occur outside the district, but it's for the benefit of the district, so,
Right.
yeah.
And just to be clear, we don't have a water tower in the budget.
Yeah. All right, so we have Member Vandenberg as a motion, the mayor as a second. Any other comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks, Andy. All right, we should have a drum roll
I know.
or something, fireworks.
Yeah,
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
fireworks soon. So yeah, Lion Square, I'm happy to report that Rockford will be breaking ground on October 6th. So we are closer than we have ever been.
2023.
2023. we should celebrate, yes. Good point, Rick. So we're going to go, I'm going to take you through a little bit of the history of this and then also talk about the design of it a bit. So back in 2020, we hired this current consultant, Progressive AE, to work on the project. There was a lot of work prior to that with various other consultants, but we're going to focus on that date of 2020. So during that time, we've been working on design of the project with them, implementation of the project, permitting of the project, and then most recently, how we're going to pay for the project. So all of that stuff is encompassed in that 3+ years of work on a project. And there was a big gap in there of about 18 months where we were in sort of circling around an Eagle permit for quite some time. That did cause us a little bit of angst and complication to the project. Happy to report, obviously, that that's been taken care of, and we can move forward from there. So during all of that, the project was worked through and there was design done. You can see in a sense here, the schematic of the project. It is essentially a shared space. It balances many things, as we've talked about before. So there's still loading docks here. We have to have access for those. There's bus parking here, unloading and loading, and there's obviously the parking garage access for public parking that we have to maintain. But we also, with the intent of this project, really worked at creating that shared space. And that shared space includes, more landscaping, a lot more greening, tree canopy. You can see a lot of that in the green areas on this diagram. New pedestrian scale lighting, entire brick paver surfaces throughout. The river overlook and a canopy structure that goes over that, including an outdoor fireplace. So this is beginning to become a place as well as a service type use, and those two things are balancing within the design. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the entire thing is also snow melted, so that's a big investment in all of this that will make the project a little bit more usable in the wintertime. And then there's obviously some seating, cafe seating opportunities, new utilities in the street. So all of that stuff is also part of the project, and the utility is a big part of the project as we move forward. So all of that said, I can show you a few more of the images here. Marion, are you? Okay, cool, thanks. So this is the overlook. And in the background, you can begin to see where the green space is, the tree canopy, and sort of the vision for that. Next slide. This is looking back towards the river where that canopy structure is within the green space. And then we'll focus on this a little bit because this is the nitty-gritty of the construction aspect. And as I mentioned, Rockford plans to start construction in this yellow part on October 6th. That work is going to continue until probably mid-January, and that's all work within and along the river. So we have to get that completed during this period of time because that's when the low water is. So that's the optimal time to work in that. It's critical that we get that stuff done prior to the end of January. And then they sort of button it up for a bit, for a few months, and then the next slide, please. Here we go. This is really the bulk of the project that's going to be happening approximately in April as the weather breaks, and with the intent of finishing that work by November of '24. So the whole project would be complete in that period of time. So there'll be a little bit of work done right now through the end of the year approximately, and then they'll pick that back up when the weather breaks in the springtime. So that's really sort of the timeline of the project in terms of the construction aspects. The logistical aspects of where we're working today is that we're obviously here to talk about some authorization from this board. And then on September 19th, the contract authorization will go to the City Commission. And then on October 10th, there'll be a bond authorization at the City Commission. So there's sort of a three-step authorization process for this as we begin to move forward. Bids were received back on August 10th from Rockford, and in your packet there's a breakdown of where those construction costs arrived at. Basically, what is referred to as a guaranteed maximum price from our construction manager. That was $10,300,000 and some change. So that's where that number is. And then there's a breakdown after that number on the second page of the memo that begins to discuss some of these other fees that are associated with the project. And these fees we're including in this investment, obviously, because they're required. But it should be noted that as we've gone through this process over about the last month, the city staff has been working diligently on refining some of these numbers. And so even as we were trying to capture some of that last week and early this week, there are some changes to what you're seeing in the memo. So one of the things that I'd like to highlight is that over the course of the last few days, the city administration fees have dropped by about $100,000. On the project, so the number that you see in there is a little bit more than what we anticipate that it will be. We also expect that there's probably some more refinement that's going to happen between now and that bond discussion that's going to happen at the City Commission. So these numbers are likely to go down, not up, as we move forward on the project. So what that means to us today is that this project is essentially being funded in a couple of different ways. One is there's $2.6 million worth of cash at the DDA that we need to authorize for the investment on this project. And then second, there's a 20-year capital improvement bond that's being taken out by the city of Grand Rapids that we are asking the DDA to authorize paying 80% of that bond. The city would pay 20% of that bond. And there's also a memo a resolution in your memo that really outlines that pretty comprehensively in terms of the agreement process. So I am happy to take any questions or comments that you may have on the project. Al?
So Tim, can you relate this to our budget?
Yeah, and maybe just a couple points of clarification before we get into questions. So the 2.6 million that's identified as cash contribution are actually private contributions to the project that are coming to the DDA. And so those are coming from WinQuest, Amway Hotel Corporation, the Secchia Family Foundation, as well as the CAA. We are so working through that. And then just to highlight what Mark pointed out, the bond amount is still being finalized. So we put a not to exceed number in here. It will be lower than that, but we wanted to make sure we had enough flexibility as we move to City Commission. So this authorization will have enough cushion in it and will likely come back in lower. So I'll clarify that. The number, we had a debt issuance number within the FY24 budget. This is a little bit higher. We expect it'll be a little bit higher. but not, we're in maybe $100,000 more than what we had budgeted for. So certainly within the FY24 budget as well as our priority plan moving forward.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I'm looking at the Rockford construction bid sheet or whatever, but there's several items not included, like tiebacks of the existing seawall and temporary flood protection measures. Are those not in the project, or are they being funded elsewhere? Oops.
I think I would characterize those things as things that they do not expect to be in the project, but as we obviously get into some of the construction and start digging up this street, there are going to be things that we obviously are not aware of. And so I think that they want to clarify what they are not including in some cases with this. So that's why there's those items that are not included. I think that the other thing that's not shown on here in detail is they have a series of allowances that they list that are included in the bid price, and those are things that are trying to accommodate potential unknowns that they may get into. So there's a, as you know, there's a roughly where that island is, there's an underground passageway that really they don't know what the condition of that is until they start digging it up. So there is an allowance in there to work on waterproofing of that thing, but it may not be used. The allowances are things that are put in the bid to deal with some unknowns that they may not be able to figure out until they start digging into the ground. But they are included in the bid, the guaranteed maximum price. And that, when we add up those allowances, it's roughly about $500,000.
And there's a construction contingency
Yes.
that's built in, and an owner's contingency for
Yes.
So
unknowns.
so any extra cost should be able to be covered by the
Yes.
allowances and the contingency?
Yes, we anticipate that being covered.
Can I ask a
Yes,
clarifying
Mayor?
question?
So help me so the 2.6 million will be utilized directly, immediately, and not be used to pay back the bonds?
Correct.
Okay, so
It's
that'll.
to reduce the bonds.
It's to reduce the bonds. That's,
The goal is to have as little debt service as possible.
okay, good.
And I want to highlight, I think Mark mentioned it, I just want to thank the city and acknowledge that they are also putting into the debt service for the bond, so they're covering the additional 20%.
Okay, good,
Will be asked to, I should say. This still has to go to commission.
okay.
Any other questions? All right. Can I please get a motion to approve?
So moved. Support? I know you want to make
I
a
know,
motion.
right? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. We're off and running.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
We'll have
right,
to have
you're
a
up. You're
groundbreaking
still up.
ceremony. Yes.
Disability Advocates of Kent County.
2 months ago, the folks from Disability Advocates of Kent County were here giving you an overview of the work that they had completed over the course of the last year. So we are here today to talk about the next phase of that this year. Both Patrick and Kim are here if we do have any, or if you have any questions of them for this work. So this collaboration began back in 2019 with Disability Advocates. And since then, we've done a lot of different things with them with the effort really of making the downtown a really more accessible place through universal design. And so beginning in 2019, we did a variety of different things that caused some collaborations that really created a series of these things that became additive over the course of these 3-4 years. And we're starting to see these things begin to come together where we can actually have some more meaningful dialogue and actually actionable items that allow us to really change the way that we deal with things within the accessible world of our downtown. So that began with a lot of like what we referred to as test pilots, looking at both public spaces, parking areas, the connections between those places and other places within the downtown, how meaningful and predictable were those connections. We continue to build on that work even today. One of the things that came out of some of those early collaborations was also really embedding disability advocates in all of our projects, especially our capital improvement projects over the course of that lifetime, and just to look at the design aspects of those and ensure that we're covering a lot of these different pieces and parts that we oftentimes overlook. And I think a good example of that is just the Lion Square project. We removed, we do plan to remove all the curbs on that street, but for somebody who is visually impaired, that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a good thing. So they still need to know where roughly the roadway is. So there was a lot of work with disability advocates and our consultant about what that edge looks like between those two spaces. And so they've constantly sort of evaluated these projects over the course of the design to ensure that they do start to get to a place where we're going above and beyond ADA, which is really the intent of a lot of this work. So with that, there was expanded work with a West Michigan Access Collaborative, which is really, we stood that up, but it's moved on from our realm, and because it's dealing with the 6 cities. So that's something that we really stood up, worked with for a little bit, but now it's moving on from our umbrella. There was thinking about access within projects and events. So they've looked at many of our events, offered some suggestions for how we might think about making those more accessible. So this year, there's really 3 things that we're working with them on. The one is just what they refer to as the built environment, and that really is the same stuff that we've been doing, obviously. So it's looking at our projects. It's continually evaluating our projects even after they're built. So what can we learn from these projects after we built them? What additional things could have we done to make them better so that we can apply those to future projects as we, again, try to make the downtown more universally accessible? I think that the big one here within their statement of work is item number 2, which is the quick guides. And these things are the accumulation of all of this information that's been created by the test pilots, by looking at these various networks within the downtown, and really beginning to create a series of these guidebooks that are quick sheets of how you might predictably navigate the downtown if you're visiting. So we intend to continue to work with them. We're discussing how we might begin to embed this stuff within our information, potentially on our website or other websites that we create, so that it becomes like more of a universal place where people who are visiting the downtown can just go and say, okay, I want to go to Van Andel Arena. I'm going to park here. How do I get here? What do I expect as I go from place to place? So that's a big one. And then the other one is the cultural environment, which is really looking at the events and activities, not only our events, but other events that are happening downtown, and how can we make these things more accessible. So with that, the ask this year is for an amount not to exceed $100,000 allocated to disability advocates of Kent County. And I'm happy to take any questions or turn it over to our friends from Disability Advocates.
So will this contract provide the digital access in the end, or does it create the information to later provide digital access?
It's providing the information. So we will internally be embedding that into some kind of web interface.
Do you have any idea how much time that might take to complete this contract?
We do not. A lot of the information is actually gathered right now. So in the packet that they had presented at the last meeting, they had a lot of this information and examples of this information. So it's like basically one-page PDFs that show you what you can expect in a parking deck, what you can expect in a route, and what you can expect at the actual venue. And so you begin to link all of those together. It's a little bit complicated, I think, from the standpoint of web design, and I'm not a web designer, but I think that we can accommodate that. Some of it is just figuring out where it wants to live. And then from there, how do we begin to link it around to various other users?
Is there any thought of maybe developing an app for this?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Move support.
All right, thank you. We have a motion.
Support.
Who moved it? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I didn't hear you. Any other comments? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Phase D. We didn't skip any phases.
Good
did we?
morning. No, this is actually what I like to call Phase D2. The Mighty Ducks. No, sorry, that was a 90s millennial joke. Only a few people got it. It's fine. Good morning, everybody. Yes, we are here to talk about wayfinding, specifically Phase D. So some of you may recall that back in June, you authorized funding for Phase D already. During a walkthrough to coordinate installation of these signs, we identified 12 new opportunities to either update or install new wayfinding signs. A lot of it had to do with the construction of the Fulton and Market corridors for the work that was going on there. A lot of signs were taken out, and so with that section being under construction, we weren't able to map it appropriately and replace those signs. Now that that work is complete, we added those signs back into this phase. We also found a couple of opportunities that were not properly inventoried in the past inventory that we had of the existing wayfinding system, and so just looking to sort of close some of those gaps. So basically the ask here is for $96,072, which will include the fabrication and installation of 12 additional signs to the Phase D section of the wayfinding project. A quick add to that, I just want to mention that hopefully you've been noticing Phase B springing up all over town. All of the large kiosks, the ones that will soon or will become digital someday, have been deployed, and also so have the small kiosks, so the non-digital kiosks have all been deployed throughout downtown. Currently working on the pole signs, which is large vehicular, medium vehicular, and small pedestrian scale pole signage. So those are currently under fabrication, being fabricated, and those will be installed in the coming weeks. Pretty straightforward. With that, I'll take any questions that anyone might have.
Yeah. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Thank you, Member Dunn, and support by Member Eddy. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Next is Monroe Center streetscape improvements.
Yeah, so the benches along Monroe Center, there are about 80 existing benches along Monroe Center that were installed as part of the Monroe Center streetscape project. Those benches are about 20 years old, and they are showing their age. We actually had the vendor who made those benches out here a couple weeks ago for an unrelated project, and they were astonished they were still standing, so that's pretty good, I guess, that we've done a pretty good job taking care of them. They actually asked if they could have one for sort of their archive to show that they built something like 20 years ago that is still sticking around. So anyway, all that to say, those benches are kind of old, and they're showing their age, and the ability to maintain them and keep them functioning is starting to become harder and harder. Additionally, the street usage of Monroe Center has significantly changed in the last 20 years. And so kind of identified an opportunity to take out these benches and replace them with a different design bench that meet our streetscape guidelines. So proposing to replace them with 40 Strata benches. It's the same benches that we currently deploy at the Zikla bus stop sites that we use. And so they're kind of large benches, can sit 3 to 4 people, and they come in a bunch of fun colors. They're not all black, so kind of add a pop of color and just some different vibrancy to Monroe Center that we don't currently have. The other sort of piece to this is these benches won't be mounted like the existing benches on Monroe Center. There's a snow melt implication there, and digging into that's quite problematic. So this sort of creates an opportunity for us to be able to move these benches around and have some fun with experimenting seating arrangements and sort of density of benches on different blocks. The good news is they weigh about 650 pounds, so you can't just sort of pick one up and take one home with you, at least not easily, and I don't want to meet the person who can. So it just creates some fun opportunities. It also allows us to, like I had mentioned, to think about current usage of Monroe Center and street activation and how restaurants and other businesses are using that space, and does it make sense to have benches there. And this just, like I said, allows us an opportunity to be flexible with the seating and think about what we might actually want to do sort of long-term if that streetscape gets redone and we can add some more permanent benches. Should that happen, these benches can go elsewhere in downtown. Like I said, they are within our streetscape guidelines, and there's lots of places in downtown that we can stick benches. With that, the ask here is for an amount not to exceed $244,988, which includes purchasing all of the benches, as well as all of the work to remove the existing benches and remediate the sites where they are with brick to make it match the rest of Monroe Center. With that, I will take any questions that any of you all might have.
Do you have a picture of them?
I don't. I thought about that this morning, and I was like, I should have put a picture in there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it online and I can't find it.
Landscapeforms.com. Yeah, I can send
Can
you
you
a
send
picture.
it?
I could doodle one for you if you'd like.
And I ask because, as you can imagine, we get a lot of feedback about our benches.
Yes, yes.
And so it's actually a really important decision.
Yes.
I'm surprised at how many comments I get
There we
about
go.
benches.
That's the one on Fulton
Oh,
Street.
okay. Thank you.
They come in
Yeah.
colors, and they're quite heavy.
Okay.
Yes. They're, so I did mention that these are on the Zikla site. So there's
Yeah,
actually a
okay.
Zikla located at just east of Fulton Street, or excuse me, east of Division on Fulton Street. So you could actually go sit in one today if you really wanted to. They're a combination like concrete steel combination.
And so I can see, I think from the image, a question I often get is how do we provide infrastructure that it prevents individuals on skateboards from damaging them, but I see this has the little
Has all the skate stops right
skate
on it.
stops. Okay.
Yep.
Are we mixing up the colors?
Yeah, we are quoted for, they make them in 4 colors. We're getting all 4 colors.
Okay,
So we've taken, I think we're getting 10 of each.
all right.
Nice. What's the
Who's
timeline?
determining where the colors go?
So the
You wanna be
colors
on that
are
committee?
the base.
Is there a design committee? What's
Oh, like where they go out? Yeah, we'll try to just mix them up.
If we could do Mason Blue by the courthouse.
exactly?
They don't come in maize and blue. I think there was a real question over here.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I would say green, but I'm kind of cranky with my alma mater right now. So, what's the timeline on this?
Timeline, yeah, that's the question. It takes about 8 to 10 weeks to fabricate the benches. I can't remember if I put it in there. We should have them deployed by the end of the year for sure.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah, yeah.
wondering.
I can't remember the timeline off the top of my head, but I think it's about 8 to 10 weeks for the fabrication of the benches. They're waiting for us to just say go, and they'll start making them. And then it's just coordinating the masonry work to remove the existing benches and making sure that we get it right so that there's still seating available on Monroe Center, and getting the benches out there. But yeah, it'll happen before the end of the year.
Okay, sorry, one other question.
Yes.
For the benches we're removing,
Yeah.
do we recycle those?
Yeah,
Do
so
we give
we'll-
them to other communities?
We'll do a couple of things. We'll try to cannibalize them as much as we can because we have those benches existing in other places downtown.
And
So-
parks? I think I've seen them in some
Yeah,
of the
so
parks.
we will internally take some stuff from them that's in good shape to use to repair other benches. We'll offer parts to the Parks Department if they would like to use them, and then anything we can't use or just isn't in good shape, we'll recycle. We can't wholesale reuse the entire bench because the base of the existing bench was specifically designed to be embedded in Monroe Center, and we have to essentially ruin it. We have to cut it to remove it, and so we won't be able to reinstall the base essentially that sits on Monroe Center anywhere else. It will be too short.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
but yeah, it's a good question.
Any other serious questions?
We'll take non-serious questions. That's fine too.
All right, thank you.
Support.
Am I ready?
On the benches, I'm not getting picked up by the fire mics.
Those are just for show.
For those benches, will they have like city logo on them at all? in
No,
any
they
way,
won't
shape, or
have
form?
anything like that.
Okay.
They're just sort of colorized and then sort of a kind of an off-white cream concrete color.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else want to sing?
See how important they are.
They are important. All right, we have a motion and support. Any other comments? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, that motion carries. Tree planting.
Tree planting, a little earlier to
Benches
talk
and
about
trees.
this year. So if you recall, last year, I believe it was, we put out an RFP to look at all of our street tree sites and hopefully remove the dead trees, stumps, and fill those in, and also fill in any empty tree sites. So the proposal today is for phases 5, 6, and 7 of that RFP, which are the last 3 phases of the street tree work. To be completed by our partners Stout Creek Landscaping, who are the ones that completed the work for the first 4 phases. They've been good tree partners with us for a few years now. Total, this will remediate and replant 94 tree sites. It'll actually remediate 99 tree sites. They are only going to replant 94 of them. Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, whom we have an existing contract for tree planting, will replant 5 of those tree well sites. They sort of came up at the last minute. The mayor found 5 tree sites that didn't have trees or they were all dead. And so we were able to add the remediation of those to this contract, and Friends is able to go in and replant those sites. It is a testament, as I've stated before, to the infinite nature of tree planting. When we think we've got it, we find 5 more tree sites that we didn't know needed to be replanted, and that will probably continue to be the case. Behind the arena, yes. So in the last memo where we talked about tree planting, we noted that we were 420 trees away from reaching our 10% canopy goal. These 94 trees will bring us even closer, so we'll be 326 trees away from completing that goal. That includes the planting that Friends of Grand Rapids Parks is currently doing for downtown. And so I just want to point out that we are working with our partners at Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, as well as Stout Creek, and have identified some additional partners in an attempt to close that gap in 2024. This does also not account for any trees planted in Lions Square, the museum project, and we don't have a final count for the Jefferson Street project too. So I am pretty confident that by the end of 2024, we will have reached our 10% goal, a year early.
Yay.
Does this include the, I don't know what you call the, in lieu of the grates, they're I think it's a...
Oh, the porous pavement. So we are completing that work separately. So
Okay.
the Stout Creek and Friends, they don't repair and replace that. They end up just ripping it out, and that is a separate scope of work that we have to do. I will note that we actually just completed a project to do about 65 of those trees. They wrapped up last week, and the Porous Pave Company is actually doing I think it's a citywide inventory, and I think I've convinced them to start downtown. So by the end of November, we should have a pretty comprehensive inventory of all of our street tree wells, and to understand the condition of them, if the porous pave needs to be redone, or if it is missing entirely. Additionally, I've asked them to identify any missing trees, so we should get a slightly more up-to-date inventory of any missing street trees that we could go back and work to remediate those sites and fill in future phases of tree planting.
And they're a locally owned.
They are a locally owned business, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
It's great that we're
Yep,
working with them.
they do good work. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
I'm going to hold you to that.
I'm-
10% by the end of 2024.
If I can't make it, I'll find a new job, I promise.
You'll plant them yourself, right?
Yeah, I'll just go buy them and start planting trees.
Thank you, Madam Dunn.
Support.
All right, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
World of Winter Projection Art.
Heyo, got the fun stuff.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning. How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, so I'm here for World of Winter Projection Art. So each year, our Citizen Alliance has deemed it important to continue our projection efforts in our downtown for more activation. We've earmarked a certain amount in our budget for the Seasonal Wonders projection, which we hope to come back with the delay in construction for Lions Square. We have those funds to be able to reallocate to do something different again, like we did last year. If you remember me coming to you separately for projection also. So with that, we've been working with a few different projects that our team has been working towards. So one, Katie Moore, our activation manager, has been putting out a cast call for local artists and she's worked really hard with her collaboration with the Graham and Smith Hoey, Rice and Rogie to be able to do projection onto the Graham building, which helps activate Monroe Center. So the call is for a grant for local artists to be able to project their installation. That call is still open. So we haven't selected anyone, so we don't know what this is going to be as of yet, but this is one of the projects that we're proposing. Next is, this has been kind of a little brainchild of mine. I wanted, our River Activation Steering Committee really wanted more educational opportunities and artwork along the river corridor. So I really wanted to hire an artist to be able to captivate the Grand River's legacy from its point of being born and created from Ice Age all the way to now and into the future. So we put out a cast call to local artists, mural artists in the community to be able to work with, and we worked with the Grand River Bands of Ottawa Indians, the Public Library, the Public Museum, etc., to be able to help depict the Grand River's legacy. So Edwin Anderson, a local artist, received that grant to be able to do this. He is now complete with this mural, which is really important. This is at under Gillette Bridge along the Riverwalk in Naboan Park. That area was really nasty, to be honest. So we're excited to be able to add something new into the space after it had gotten graffitied pretty bad. So now what I wanted to do was make this an immersive projection installation experience for the winter. That's such a key connector along the Riverwalk for the rest of our installations. And if you remember last year, we did the Tropical Tundra installation, which was really fun and interactive for citizens to embrace. So what we would do now is make this an interactive, immersive experience as well, where we would have new lighting. New lighting has been installed in this area too, so it's fun rainbow lighting currently out there, which looks great. But working with Live Space, and the artists, we would be able to do a voiceover depicting and telling the story of the Grand River's legacy, and then also different lighting features and sounds of the rapids in the installation. So that is the second install that we're proposing. And then the third is Stargate from Chalk River Labs, and they would be working with local vendors too to be able to build this. This is an installation, a Canadian artist currently residing in Australia. And I have a video, if I can. I feel like every time I do this, I screw it up. You're doing great, Kim. Thanks so much, Tim. If I can do it. Nope. Bear with me. Yeah, what's it? I can display that.
Maybe not.
How many does it take?
No. Sorry, I'm trying.
Well, normally this is easier, but okay. I can send a link. But basically, it's a projection installation. It's also an art piece for the day, so it works both during the day and night. All of these installations would be here for the whole 2 months. So working with these three, and then we also still have all of our grants that Katie manages with local artists. So those have been selected, and Katie, I think we're at eight grants that we're able to fund through that program as well. So when I get back up here and show the whole world of winter, when we get way closer to winter, I'll be able to showcase some of those that we've been able to fund. Thanks, Bill. This one will be on the stage at Anaboan Park. So between Anaboan and the bridges and then 555, those are really kind of the hubs of World of Winter. But of course, no, we all fail. Well, at least it's not just me. So yes, spreading out these installs basically, but this one would go on a knob one. So it'd be a great backdrop for the city skyline. So with that, I have an ask to you to be able to support these 3 projects for an amount not to exceed $100,000. And that goes to pay for equipment and artist fees specifically.
They look great.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few pictures in the packet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we'll send the link for the video.
I think there is a link to the video in the packet, so maybe you'll have better chances on your computer than me on the presentation.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
So one question, so, and this is just me personally, I feel like all of us here are, essentially ambassadors, right, to, work like this.
Yes, sir.
But what's a good number, or who to call,
Don't forget your mic.
what's a good number or who to call when an installation isn't, like, performing or
The best.
acted well? Because, like, I noticed, like, this weekend or last weekend, the one bubbles thing, one was deflated, and I'm
We
like,
had an
what
issue,
do
yeah.
I do?
I was alarmed right away, trust me. But with weather, we haven't been able to go out and fix. So my
Yeah.
team gets to do that today. So usually the channel is ambassadors
Ambassador,
or
okay.
our info at, but you know me, so
Yeah.
you can just reach out to me.
Yep. Okay.
But
Sounds
yeah, so, but if it's a general citizen, they can always talk to our ambassadors, our info at, give us a call at DJRI. And generally, between our team and the ambassadors that are feet on the street consistently, we usually are aware when an install is down. It just might take a minute for repairs to happen. So bubbles, we're on.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
I just want to congratulate Kim and her team, on what they have done with World of Winter.
Thank you, Cam.
Yeah, it is good.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thanks so much.
Do we have a second?
Support.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments or questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
We're 4 seasons.
we don't have any more money to spend. Next
We're done.
is the,
We're broke.
exactly, Executive Director Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I jump in, wanted to acknowledge a few new staff members that have joined the team. So sitting over here, we have Lauren Sudgeest, who's our administrative assistant, and Katie Smith, who's our front desk coordinator. Pia Liu is not here, but she's an events intern and helping out the events and activation team for the summer. So just wanted to acknowledge and welcome them and make sure you can put names with faces. Welcome. Yeah, we're very happy to have them here. Then also, I sent an email to the board yesterday afternoon just to follow up on our discussion around engineering, the engineering department last month. So city has been very diligent in kind of pulling together some information. Wanted to share that with you. Thanks to City Engineer Berkman and Deputy City Manager Kate Behrens for their help with that. We'll dive into that a little bit more and maybe next month, depending on agenda, but definitely in the fall, just so we can have a more in-depth discussion. But just wanted to acknowledge their follow-up and thank them for the work on that. Then jumping into just a few updates on the project side, starting with Jefferson Avenue. So Mark and Melvin referenced this earlier. This will break ground, we expect on the 25th. So the work in the median there and the street should be wrapped up substantially by November. So keep an eye out for that work coming your way. On the riverfront, definitely want to celebrate Lion Square as loudly as possible, but also want to acknowledge the great work happening across the river at the Public Museum. Their bids have also come in for Phase 1, and they should be breaking ground shortly after Lion Square. They're dealing with some of the same time constraints in order to do that work right along the riverfront and do it while the water's low enough. So if all goes well, they should also be breaking ground this fall. So
We're going to beat them.
we will be ahead of them. And remind Dale every time you see him. Because he was racing us. And then also, we haven't talked about this for a minute, but the Veterans Park building renovation is underway. hopefully wrapped up by the end of the month. I know they were pushing to get done by ArtPrize, so they're a little behind that, but nonetheless, it's looking really good. This is where the Has Heart coffee will go, and I know they're working extremely hard to get it done as soon as possible. So it's exciting to see all this construction happening and moving forward, so I wanted to point it out. And then a few kudos and acknowledgements on the event and activation side. So the Return to River Festival was a huge success. Kim and her team, and in particular Megan, who kind of thought all of this up and helps to implement it, did a great job. We had a really great turnout. We will have a full report out probably in November for you to share all the stats, but great crowd, great turnout, really, really successful event. So kudos to the whole team on that. It was a kind of a all hands on deck, but certainly the events and activation team carried the water. We also have a number of new murals out and about. If you haven't seen them, those include the parking ramp entrances and surface parking lot entrances. So Katie Moore helped with that project. A number of those are around, so take a look. We dedicated our most recent Women's Way mural just last week. So this is the one for Dr. Ella Mary Sims. This is down at 21 Weston, if you haven't seen. Looking great. And then a few of our Heartside historic murals are up. This is the one, History of Chinese, Hispanic, and Syrian Immigrants over at Division. And then also Bird is the Word by George Eberhardt at Anabawan. So a lot of new art, a lot of great murals. Just want to acknowledge it and say thanks to the team. And then on that note, if you haven't heard, ArtPrize starts tomorrow. So come check that out. The opening event is at Anabawan Park. It'll include food trucks, fireworks. A band will also be playing. So get down and check that out at Anabawan. And then for some of the other events and activities, there's a whole slew of them. So I didn't want to list all of them, but did want to call out HeartPrize, which we are also a sponsor of. That's taking place this weekend, kind of a neighborhood activation event, some family activities, business promotions, as well as some food vendors are out there. So a lot happening, and we hope that you will come down and enjoy it all. That's my report.
Nice. Any questions for Tim? All right. That sounds good. Now we enter public comment. If there's anyone in the public that would like to step forward, now is your time. Bill, I thought you were going to step forward. Okay.
Bill, you work here, man.
Right. You're not the public. What the? All right. Seeing none.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm Kate Behrens, Deputy City Manager for the City of Grand Rapids. As Mr. Kelly noted, we did provide some responses to the questions that came up at your last meeting. I just wanted to reiterate, we typically do have staff here at your meetings, always available to answer questions as they may come up. Also, many channels of communication that exist between DGRI, DDA, and the city staff, always available to help answer questions as presentations are being put together as well. Very excited to be here today. You guys heard about a lot of great projects that are bringing a lot of big projects to fruition, and we really appreciate the partnership to make this a great livable community, and we'll do our best to make sure that this partnership stays strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Anybody else? Appreciate that, Kate. All right. At this time, we're going to go into closed session. I need a motion for closed session under Section 81H of the Open Meetings Act to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, a written legal opinion.
So moved.
So the formal motion is, I move that the board meet in closed session under Section 81H of the Open Meetings Act to conduct material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, a written legal opinion.
All right, and we have
Thank you.
support.
We do need a roll call vote.
Yeah, it's a roll call.
We have to approve it first, though.
Yes.
Oh, that's the vote? Okay.
Yes.